Think about the most awkward situation you've ever been in. Now, imagine you're a doctor in a delivery room. Everything is going great, the family is cheering, and then the baby arrives, and one look is all it takes to realize that fatherhood just became a lot more complicated. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let's get into it.
Doctors, have you ever seen a couple have a child that was obviously not the father's? If so, what happened? My grandmother, who works as a nurse, told me this just now. I remember when I used to work on the maternity wards, she was just a nurse, not a midwife, that a baby was born that had black hair to two blonde parents. I was speaking to the father, and this didn't seem to faze him, since both of his parents had black hair, and he seemed well educated. She, on the other hand, when the father left the room, obviously exhausted and slightly confused, said to the midwife, "He has black hair. We're both blonde. Who has he been sleeping with? Can I have a maternity test? Do hospitals do that?" Next story. My friend is half Filipino, and his wife is African American. So when their first child was born, they took him home, and thought his skin seemed a little yellowish, so they took him to the doctor to check for jaundice. The nurse said, "Well, what color is he supposed to be?" And they were like, "We don't know." Next story. I had one woman that refused to push. I asked everyone to get out of the room so I could do an examination, and while we were alone, asked her why she wasn't wanting to push out the baby. She was afraid the baby was going to be black. Both her and her husband were white. Next story. Not a nurse, but I work in the blood bank portion of the lab. We type newborn's blood to detect possible incompatibilities between the mother and the baby. Sometimes nurses call saying something like, if the mother is O positive and the father is a positive, can they have a B positive child? I usually just say that a lot of people are mistaken about their own blood type, which they are, and we will recheck our testing and paperwork. It's awkward, and I don't even have to talk the patients. Next story. I work as a nurse for 10 years, and honestly, this is extremely rare. I've never seen it, and I don't know any other nurses who have. Babies pretty much all look alike. They don't have distinctive eye color. Some races look like other races. Even black babies are very light-colored at birth. So even if the baby isn't the assumed father's, it's pretty impossible to tell. I've had a few patients who had two potential baby daddies. One who was cheating on her husband and he didn't know, but the boyfriend would come visit after the husband went home. And one who had two men with her in the delivery room, waiting to see if the baby looked more like one or the other. Next story. When I went to the hospital in labor with my first child, the front desk stalled my husband with some paperwork while they took me up to the maternity ward. Since we'd pre-registered, we were a little confused. Once I was alone with a nurse, she asked very seriously if I wanted my husband to be allowed up, or if there was someone else I wanted them to call. It was a small rural town, and apparently, my husband isn't the father was common enough that they had a procedure in place. Next story. My mom is a midwife, but this is a personal story. My father's business partner's wife cheated on him. He had an inkling that their third baby wasn't his. The first two were IVF, so her spontaneous pregnancy was a shock. When it came out, it was obvious it looked like a police officer that she had an affair with. The father was devastated but raised him as his own, because regardless, it was his daughter's brother. Next story. I work at a county hospital, and I think what's just as shocking as finding out a baby isn't the dad's, which is hard at first because it takes a while for a baby to develop pigment, a black baby could look white, are a lot of the very young dads feeling totally detached and resentful towards the baby and the mom. We had one guy who was sitting in the nursery almost on crying, not because his girlfriend gave birth, but he couldn't go on his full ride to an amazing college out of state anymore, and had to do construction with his soon-to-be father-in-law. Another guy kept telling his baby mama how gross she was looking while giving birth to their daughter. It was cringeworthy. So many of the young guys are more focused on their phones rather than helping take care of the baby. We try to promote bonding between them, but they are only between 16 to 20 and are really regretting their actions. Next story. Working with military medicine will show you the wonderful world of infidelity. One mother delivered her child a few months after her husband returned from a 9-month deployment. The gentleman stood outside the room and waited until the delivery was finished so he could sign the paperwork. Oddly enough, under father, he signed it as unknown and left. Over the next few hours, 4 or 5 other Marines came up to pay her a visit. That was a really awkward night in the hospital. Next story. A lot of fathers have never seen a newborn before, and most of them look alike. Experienced nurses can tell at a glance usually if a baby is a different race from the father. Most of the time they are so stoked from the birth process that they aren't even noticing any differences. Although I do get a lot of black fathers exclaiming that their baby is white at birth. Is this a thing? I had 2 grandmas ask me,
Is it normal for the baby to be this color? I had not looked at the baby yet and told them all babies are a little blue at birth. Then I noticed the baby was black. Married mom and dad were white, and this baby was going to be a junior. They were still acting as if nothing was out of sorts when they were discharged a day or two later. Oh, and another story, there are recessive genes as well. I have friends who are a mixed couple, and their last child was white, red-haired, not albino looking.
Looked Irish. No fooling around involved. Next story. This is not me, but my stepsister is one of these mothers. In college, she got pregnant and gave birth to a boy with blonde hair and blue eyes. A couple years later, she got married to the father while she was once again pregnant. Baby number 2 came out very much black. They ended up staying together because baby number 2's dad wants nothing to do with it. Her husband now raises him and their first child on his own because she ended up leaving him for another woman. She's an idiot. Next story. I have a mixed son. I'm black. His father is white. After he was born, I took a picture of him for my coworkers to see. A month later, I come back to work, and one coworker was confused about the photo. All he could say was, "But he's white." He thought that because I'm black, he would automatically come out dark. Next story. My wife is a nurse, not in maternity ward though. In her hospital, I'm sure in others too, when a baby is born, a sound goes off throughout the entire hospital. A chime or something. She says on very rare occasions you will hear that chime, and within 10 minutes after you hear over the intercom a call for a code yellow, or whatever color it is, in maternity ward, that means a fight is occurring or some type of physical rampage, and for any well-built male to come help with the situation. Maybe a coincidence, but probably not. Next story. My sister has a small percentage of Aboriginal in her, and her husband is half Aboriginal. Their first kid looks as expected, darkish hair, darker skin. The second is super pale with white blonde hair. Next story. My husband is half Mexican. When our son was born, he took one look at him and said, "He doesn't look very Mexican." Cue awkward looks from the nurses. He was not actually upset though, just joking. My husband looks pretty white himself. I actually offered to get a paternity test done, since he and I have casual relationship when I found out I was pregnant, and both sleeping with other people. I was 99.9% sure due to timing and other factors, and my son does look a lot like him, once you get past the fact he's got blonde hair and blue eyes, and should probably be named Whitey McWhirters. My husband declined to get the test done. He believes our son is his, but I'd always be open to getting the test if he ever decides he wants to be 100% sure. At this point, it seems moot. We're happily married, and he's dada, so. Next story. Not a nurse, I'm a phlebotomist, but we've had more cases of unwed women not letting their minutes sign the birth certificate, even if he was the biological father. The men react poorly, obviously, and make a scene in the hospital. The maternity ward here has extra security because people are famous for taking babies too. Before anyone asks, Ohio. Also, for some reason, newborns are posted online for most hospitals, along with their full name. I urge some of you to Google your nearest hospital and look at the ridiculous names people give their kids. Next story. This is probably way too late to be seen, but I'll share anyway. My white mother was married to my white father when she got pregnant with my younger brother. She was working at a Chinese restaurant at the time. My little brother is half Chinese. I assume my mother knew the chances of that happening were pretty good because she took off across the country to give birth. Eventually, she moved us back to our home state, and my father wasn't at all surprised by my brother's ethnicity, given my mother's well-known proclivity towards sleeping around. Because they were married at the time of my brother's birth, my father is legally his father. He was forced to pay child support by the state, even though my mother never went back to him, and you can pretty clearly tell they are not blood related. My father always loved my brother though. He never said he wasn't his son, never complained about paying the support. Even years later, after they hadn't spoken in ages, Dad had no problem signing paperwork so my brother could marry his immigrant wife. I think the saddest part of this story is the fact that my brother will never know who his real father is, and I doubt his biological father even knows of his existence. Although this doesn't seem to bother him in the least. Next story. Wife works in a maternity ward, and this rarely happens according to her. What happens more is people who should not be having kids come in. They had a mother one time who admitted to using meth during labor because she was afraid of the pain. She said the worst fathers to deal with are the lesbian couples who did IVF. The one who did not carry the baby is clearly not the mother.
and it is kind of a medical gray area on how to put that relationship into the computer. A lot of times, the egg will be from the father, other mother, and then the other partner will carry the baby. My wife said these father-mothers are usually aggressive and combative, and sometimes they are abusive toward the birthing mother. Every delivery, they have to get the laboring mother alone and ask her a bunch of well-being questions. And my wife said the lesbian moms usually always complain about abuse. I was surprised because, two women. Next story. I've only seen this happen once, and it was while I was in school during a rotation on the maternity ward. The mother and father were both dark-skinned. The baby came out very light and pink, as babies do. I remember the attending physician and nurse trying to speak quietly with the father, who had stormed out of the room, and explain that dark-skinned babies gain pigmentation after birth. But he wasn't trying to hear any of it. I don't know how the situation ended, but the baby was cute as a button. Next story. My own birth was a little suspect. I had bright red hair and super pale features, and both my parents have black hair, and they tan well. So when they said, "She's crowning, I can see her red hair," it freaked my mom out, and she stopped pushing and started asking questions about how that was possible. Next story. I don't know, but I have an acquaintance, pale blonde girl with a pale blonde husband, who is about to give birth any day now. And right when she got pregnant, she had an affair with a coworker, who is a black guy, and her husband has no idea. Many people are very much looking forward to what this kid is going to look like. I wish I had a hidden camera for the delivery room. Next story. Never saw that, but this happened to my best friend. She married young, both in the military. Husband wanted to start a family right away, so they planned for a baby, and she was soon pregnant. Joy and bliss the whole pregnancy, getting the baby's room ready, despite not having much money, etc. Horrible, drug-free, painful delivery over, and the doctor said, "It's a girl." This was back before ultrasounds were routinely done. The husband's face turned angry and full of hate, and he said to his wife, "I knew you'd get your way, you fucking bitch." And he walked out of the hospital and never returned. By the time her and the baby were released from the hospital and she came home, she found her husband had moved out of the apartment, taking everything with him, including her clothes and furniture, and everything they had gotten for the baby. She came home to no crib, no diapers, no food, nothing. He divorced her and had nothing to do with the child, including refusing to pay court-ordered child support, until the daughter was 14, when he remarried and decided to play Father of the Year. Next story. I'm Korean and my wife is Irish Welsh. When my first daughter was born, she looked so completely Asian that one slightly dingy nurse wondered out loud if my wife was sure the baby was hers. Next story. A medical student who rotated through OB had a father of a newborn be initially excited, but caught me in the hall after pre-rounding in the unit. He asked me in a very hushed tone, "Listen, me and the wife were kind of on the rocks about 9 months ago. How can I make sure is mine?" Honestly, all I could do was slip him a pamphlet we had on the unit with contact information for getting paternity testing. As far as baby obviously not being his, the parents were both white, and the baby was a white alien-looking thing, as nearly all white babies are. Next story. My aunt had a blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby with an Asian man. They were all terrified of what he would do when he's seen, as he was very violent. Apparently, he came in and seen the baby. He remained extremely silent, as did all the people in the room. He then just left without saying a word. Everyone was confused. He came back an hour later with flowers and balloons and acted like it was nothing. While everyone was sure he knew, he never said anything and treated the child like she was his, until he went to prison for throwing hot chip pan oil over another woman. I feel that as he mistreated the mother, he must have known at that point she went to seek love somewhere else. And this was his punishment, and that's why he didn't react. He wasn't stupid. He had a temper, and this was his punishment. And I felt he just dealt with it. Still though, he was an ass. Next story. I was one of those kids, born with a full head of jet black hair to blonde parents. My dad was convinced I belonged to someone else, given my strawberry blonde and blonde siblings who were born bald. Dad got over it though, decided to suck it up and stay with Mum, even though he knew she'd cheated. It wasn't until I was 30-something that the option to chase up my true heritage came. Paternity says I'm 100% theirs. Next story. My mom has told me a few stories about this happening when delivering kids. She's only seen it happen obviously a few times. White parents, ethnic kid. The fathers react anywhere from anger to sadness to shock. She once had a guy ask if the baby had enough air because it was black. Generally, the mothers start crying and apologizing, while the fathers leave the room to reflect or break stuff. Then there was one couple where the kid was Hispanic, and the mom, husband, and father were all in the room and happy. So I guess there was an arrangement there. People are weird. Next story. I'm not a nurse, but I have a cousin who is black, but his parents are white. He is 100% theirs, like paternity tests and all. He just has a rare. Skin color is codominant, so it isn't really recessive, genotype. Next story. My older son had had his first BM while still in utero. He was stained and came out looking like a black, literally black, skinned child with red curly hair. I'd seen black and mixed race babies before, so I knew that wasn't what was going on. But my so was clueless. My SOS face was priceless. I was much more concerned with the baby's health and didn't really think about it at first, but now it makes me laugh. Next story. This is sort of funny. My son looks exactly like a perfect blend of my wife and I. When he was born, he was a studly little dude, far better looking than I, so I accused my wife of sleeping with Brady Quinn, who was the Browns QB at the time. It was a running joke for a while. However, when my wife was pushing his little sister on out, the doctor asked, "Okay, who has red hair in the family?" The answer, irrefutably, no one.
My wife and I both have brown hair and brown eyes, as do my parents and her parents, and all of our grandparents. So I looked at my wife and said, Brandon Weeden? He happened to be the Browns quarterback at that time. Our little girl has strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes. She doesn't look like anyone in our family, but is the spitting image of a close female friend of mine. What has science done? Next story. My bio dad thought I wasn't his because I came out too brown, and accused my bio mom of f***ing the black mailman. My bio mom is half Peruvian, half black, and I'm a bit lighter than her. So someone had to gently explain it to him. Though considering they got rid of me a week later, I don't think it got through to him. Next story. Guy looks at this baby, looks at his wife, looks back to the baby, and his face goes white. Turns to the door, dials his phone as he's walking out, and the first thing he says is, "Houston, we have a problem." I got to call in a code silver, domestic dispute, on that one. Part 2. While doing an OBGYN rotation in med school, I was in the room to witness a white baby being born to two relatively light-skinned black parents. Apparently, it is fairly common for African Americans to have really light-skinned babies that darken up considerably in the first few months of life. But neither the father nor I were aware of this fact. White babies usually come out pink anyways. Because I was an inconsiderate, unaware jerk of a med student, I basically shot Dad. He was clearly thinking the same thing and got visibly upset for a few minutes until he straight up asked the pediatrician, "Why is my baby white?" And everything was explained. We all had a good laugh about it afterwards. Next story. This happened to my uncle. He is a bit eccentric and out there, thanks to an intense former drug problem. A former girlfriend, who he dated for about 3 or 4 months, said she was pregnant with his child. He was almost 40 and had 2 broken engagements, so he saw this as the only chance at having a family and wanted to do it right. He moved across the state, got a legit job so he could stay in one place. I think he was a delivery truck driver before, and he loved it. They were in the process of buying a home when she went into labor. My uncle and the woman are both white. He is all excited to witness the birth of his first and probably only child. And, sure enough, the baby was black. As soon as they cleaned the baby off and gave it to the mother, he walked out of the room, packed up all his stuff, and joined a motorcycle gang. Fun life lesson. Don't join a motorcycle gang. And yes, I know some black babies are born with fair skin, but they aren't pink like white babies. At least his wasn't, and the baby's skin was darker than you would expect. It also had some features that obviously did not come from 2 white people. Next story. I delivered a baby that was obviously not the father's. When he realized this, he let out a happiness shriek, punched the air, and moonwalked out of the room, never to be seen again. Next story. Only once. There was a mix-up in the nursery. An Ethiopian man, an Irish man, and an English man's children were placed in the nursery without tags. The Irish man walked up to the black child and began fawning over it and calling the baby his son, over and over. The Ethiopian tried to intervene by pointing out that the child was obviously not his. The Irish man looked up with tears in his eyes as he held the baby. I just can't take the chance that he's English. Next story. My father-in-law's friend recently had a baby. He was so excited about it during the days leading up. Lots of cigars and beers. When the baby was finally delivered,
It was mixed. He and his wife are both white. They aren't together anymore. Next story. A guy I graduated high school with knocked up a Hooters waitress. His family is loaded with money.
I feel this is an important part of the story. They have a shotgun wedding. Baby is born biracial. He is white, as is she. Now he is married to a Hooters waitress, raising a child that is blatantly not his. Next story. When my daughter was born, she looked very Asian. My girlfriend and I are both white. The nurse told me I didn't have to sign the birth certificate right away if I didn't want to. My little girl is 7 now, and she looks nothing like her mom and just like me. I guess I make a beautiful little girl. Next story. Not me, but my dad, and only semi-related. He was a critical care pediatrician, and a very young, that is a few months old, child was brought in. The kid needed blood, ASAP, so after giving some universal donor blood, they tested the kid to see his blood type. They found out the kid was AB, and the mom said she was A. The dad, without missing a beat, volunteers the fact that he is O. My dad says the guy clearly didn't remember his high school biology because it doesn't quite work like that, but he just didn't have the heart to explain. On a positive note, the kid was fine, and the happy family went on their way after only a few days in the resuscitation. Next story. My aunt was a midwife way back when, and the first baby she ever delivered was quite clearly not belonging to the woman's husband. She knew mostly because while she had the husband on one side, the father of the child was standing to the other. Next story. This guy Dale has a wife named Nancy, with whom he had a child, and the child, Joseph, came out looking extremely Native American. Dale and his wife, both being white, made Dale confused. He still hasn't put 2 and 2 together about Nancy and her friend, the only known local Native American, John, being together behind his back for years. He still, to this day, thinks Joseph is his real son. Idiot. Next story. When my mom had my older sister, they took her away at first because she was premature. When they brought her back to my mom later, she began freaking out because of my sister's dark skin. Turns out, my dad has Cherokee Indian hiding somewhere in there, and my sister got a good bit of it. She was pretty embarrassed. Next story. I'm a student nurse, and last year I had to do experience in a hospital. We could elect where we wanted to go for a week at a time, and so one week, I chose the maternity ward. I got to stand back and watch as a baby was delivered to this seemingly normal white couple. After a long and hard labor, the baby was eventually delivered. Its skin was dark, but we thought it was just because the baby was covered in a whole lot of crap, literally and figuratively. And so, I helped to clean the baby. But lo and behold, the baby was actually a dark baby. After an exchange of awkward glances between the other nurses and myself, we gave the baby to the parents. We all stood back, expecting this huge outburst. But apparently, the husband knew that his wife had had an affair with an African-American man, and he knew that the baby might not be his. He admitted to me when his wife was asleep that he used to work a lot and hardly paid attention to his wife, and he didn't blame her for the affair. When he found out, he stopped working so much, and instead chose to focus on his wife and child. At the end of the day, he still looked at the baby as though it was his own biological son, and I don't think that it ever changed. Next story. I used to work on a labor and delivery ward at a naval hospital in Japan. A large majority of the patient population were 25-year-old dependents, wives of service members. We had some crazy cases sometimes. Probably the worst bait and switch I had to deal with involved a girl who went on a trip back to the States while her husband was still stationed in Japan. She came back claiming she was assaulted while at a party. I can't really prove she was lying, but to me, the way she was telling the nurse about the event sounded phony. Her husband was also a huge pushover. The dude was black, she was Hispanic, and the baby was obviously Asian. He had to have known, but I just acted like it was a normal delivery. Next story. This happened to a noun of mine. He had been verb this girl for about 9 months when she got pregnant. They thought about verb, but decided to have the noun instead. So when it came time to verb the noun, he drove to the place and was verbing in the waiting room. The doctor came out holding the noun and looking for the noun. The noun was black, and my friend wasn't, so he didn't think the noun was his until the doctor verbed his name. It was so for him. Next story. One time, the guy in the room during the delivery came out and started asking about paternity testing options within 5 minutes of the delivery. It was awkward to say the least. Next story. My friend, who is black, got a white girl pregnant. Baby came out super white, and he's still a loving father. They also had a child before this too, and she is dark-skinned. Next story. My kid was blue when she came out. I seriously couldn't shake the thought of, what the heck is this? My kid? Then about 5 minutes later, realized she looked exactly like me.
GF must have been banging my look-alike. Next story. Not in the medical field, yet, but when I was about 10 or 11, our neighbors across the street, a very typical upper-middle-class white suburban yuppie family with two cute little blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls, were expecting their third child. The family was very sociable, always outside and conversing with neighbors, including my parents. Right after the baby was born, they all of a sudden become very withdrawn. We rarely see the husband around anymore, if at all. The baby was born during the winter, so for the first few months of his life, all we see is a little bundled up body. And then the weather warms up. Off comes the hat and coats to reveal a little curly-haired, dark-skinned, mixed-race baby. The family moves out a few months later, without saying anything to anyone. Next story. I'm the baby. I was a very dark-skinned, black-haired baby born to two very white parents. Within a few days, weeks, my skin lightened significantly, and my hair turned almost white. I am now an extremely fair-skinned ginger. No idea what happened, but I regularly joke that I was born a poor black child. Next story. My childhood friend had two kids with the same girl. They lived together for the sake of the kids, but they're not really together. They said the same thing after the first kid, but then they had a second one. Anyway, she's pregnant with numero tres, though he said it's not his. I'll be waiting with the popcorn. Next story. Not a delivery, but in the same vein. I used to work in surgery. One general surgeon told me this story. When he was training in Louisiana, he operated on this guy to repair a hernia. He gets in there and finds a vestigial uterus. What the heck? This guy is married and has about 10 kids. His daddy parts all look normal from the outside. He takes it out. In the post-surgical interview with his patient and family, he tries to fish around and hint at something being a little unusual in the procedure. And was there any problems with conception or other family history? But gets nothing but blank faces from the presumably not super educated people. His choice, not mine. He just said it went well and that was all. Decided not to dig into the issue of who really fathered those kids. Next story. When my Soon was born, the nursery had the blinds closed mostly all the way. There was only a small crack at the bottom and my family could only get a peek to the new addition. When my mom took her first look, the first baby she saw was a black baby who just so happened to have the same name as my son. My mom got a horrified look on her face and told my ex-mother-in-law, "How is she going to explain this?" But my ex-mother-in-law had noticed the very white baby that happened to be behind the black one and set my mom straight. Next story. My daughter's father skipped town when I was only 5 months pregnant. I knew he was the father, no doubt about it. Both of us are brunette. Both of my parents are, and so were both of my exes. I thought for sure my baby would be either bald, doubtful, or brunette, with either brown eyes, both had brown eyes. Out pops a blonde hair, blue-eyed baby. Okay, eyes can change, but they haven't. Her eyes are still ocean blue. But the hair? Knew it was impossible she was any other guy's child because I slept with one guy in the last 3 years. Turns out my daughter decided to take after my mom's father with blonde hair, and my dad with her blue eyes. My ex still doesn't believe the baby is his, even with DNA matching and everything. Next story. Not the same, but we were told all through our pregnancy that we were having a boy. When my wife went in for a C-section and they pulled out a girl, I was beyond surprised. I literally asked the nurse carrying the baby over to be cleaned off, "Is that a pussy?" When she said yes, and I said we were supposed to have a boy, the doc chuckled and said, "That almost never happens." Next story. I was in the delivery room when my niece gave birth to her first child. She was very young, and had told everyone, including our extremely redneck family, that it was the previous boyfriend's baby, who is also white. The time of delivery, they took the baby over to be cleaned up, and the nurse looks my brother, grandpa of child, says, "This child is African American. You could have heard a pin drop." My brother left for a long time. My mother, her best friend, stunned silence. She had failed to mention she had a short-lived fling with a nice black gentleman while on a weekend break from the ginger guy. Needless to say, those boys' parents got a shocking phone call that day. "Hi, you're grandparents now. Baby's already here, and we're sure it's his." Next story. Back in the day, my mom worked as in labor and delivery nurse for 10 years. My dad's brother, let's call him Dan, and his wife, let's call her Shirley, were having a baby. So naturally, they wanted someone they trusted to help with the delivery. My mom scrubbed in, and numerous family members were there and around, including my dad. My dad and his brother Dan were out in the hallway, and Shirley was giving birth, with my mom helping her. As soon as my mom saw the baby, she knew a crap storm was going to happen, as the kid was black, and Dan and Shirley were white.
Note, this was also in the early 80s in southern Missouri, so it was still pretty taboo.
Shirley tried to make excuses about the baby's skin color 10 minutes after the kid was born. No joke. Dan was pissed, and the rest of the family was shocked. Years later, Dan adopts the kid and raises it as his own, because Shirley goes bats hit crazy and leaves both her kids behind. The second one is Shirley's and Dan's. And that's the story on some of my family's crazy history. Next story. Birth mom said she had cheated on hubby. Said, if it's hubby's, we are keeping it. If not, the baby will go up for adoption. Asked about DNA labs? Nope. Asked, how will you know? Answer, if the baby looks like me or hubby. Next story. All newborns, more or less, come out the same color, and it usually takes a few weeks for the pigment in their skin to develop to a hue of whatever race they are. So there's really no way to tell right after birth about what race the baby is, or whether it's really theirs or not, without a DNA test. Next story. Older couple, her 45, him 62, were dink and bikers. He had the big snip in the military in the 60s. She shows up to the gynecologist thinking she is in menopause. Nope, prego. So the dad is a little freaked out, having had a vasectomy and all. The MD said several times that the older vasectomies had a high fail rate. As a note, this guy was a live dast and die fun dude with very red and some gray hair. Fast forward to labor. She was a scheduled. We get this beautiful baby girl out, and her hair is orange red. I mean a sweet little ginger who looks just like dad. The mom was cracking up and laugh, cry. She said to her old man she had never and would never cheat on him. The man was crying and holding the baby girl. It was kind of awesome. Next story. You can't tell a baby isn't the father's just because it's the wrong color. There have been plenty of cases of babies being born the wrong color and actually were the father's child. Next story. I have a coworker who ended up with a girl that became pregnant after they hooked up. He stayed with her through the whole pregnancy, anxiously awaiting his son. The baby is born pretty white, and within the first month, it starts to darken. He shows the picture to a black guy who tells him that his baby looks black. My coworker asked for a paternity test, and sure enough, the baby is half black. He left her instantly. Part 3. Not a doctor, but one of my friends did. He was away going to some convention, and a guy we knew went over his house and slept with his wife. I wasn't aware at the time he was the one who knocked her up, but 9 months later, everyone knew because of how dark the baby's skin was, except for my friend. The dude and my friend's wife were together for 13 years after, but he broke it off for some reason. After all the years, the son and the dad still haven't figured it out. Pretty sad, really. My friend did extermination, so he was always out of the house too, leaving her alone. The guy always showed up in the middle of the afternoon to do massages. I would have stopped them, but I was too busy selling propane and propane accessories. Next story. When I was born, I had red hair, and everyone in my mom's family was brunette, and everyone in my dad's family was brunette, and so he thought I wasn't his. But the nurse explained how red hair happens, and he never believed her. But my mom decided he was too stupid to stay with, and that's how I grew up without a dad until I was 8. Next story. I might be the first medical professional to post in this thread. Hot damn. So I'm an intensive care units nurse that was floating to the nursery. A baby was born with a genetic abnormality, had one missing limb, but was otherwise doing fine. The pediatrician was in the parents' room discussing with them the follow-up type stuff for the baby. Appointments with a geneticist, an orthopedic surgeon, etc. At some point in the conversation, the mother asked what the baby's blood type was, to which the pediatrician responded, a positive. The father of the baby insisted that was impossible, as he and his wife, this was their third baby, were both O-. The pediatrician got totally flustered and came back to the nursery to verify the lab results. Baby really was a positive. We even went so far as to redraw the baby's blood and retest it. Nope, a positive. There is absolutely no chance that the baby belonged to that man. The husband left the hospital soon after and didn't show up again until it was time to pick up the mom and baby to bring them home. The mom spent the rest of the hospital stay lying alone, in the dark, mostly hiding under the covers. Next story. Not a doctor, but I crapped my pants in front of one once. Anyways, I worked with a guy who brought in his baby after it was a few months old. It was obviously a Mexican looking, it had a nice tan, baby, and he and his wife were white. I remember when he left, we were all just sitting there wondering how the funk he actually believed the kid was his. 2 years later, he starts to realize the kid looks nothing like him. He gets a blood test done. It's not his. That poor guy lost his mind over it. He got divorced, quit his job,
and randomly came in one day and uncontrollably started crying to a girl we worked with. His experience taught me volumes about trust, in that it's good to trust people, but when your wife brings home a Mexican baby, don't wait 2 years to ask questions. Next story. Not a doctor, but actually witnessed this. This is that story I have that no one believes is real, but oh, it is. Requires slight backstory for impact. Parents are good friends with other parents, Irish Catholic. Daughter a bit older than me. Joined the army. Got pregnant and engaged to her then boyfriend.
They were close family friends and stationed near us, and my family offered to have the wedding at our house, which they decided to do right after the baby is born, and the military would move them to family housing. The day comes, he's in the delivery room with her, black baby pops out. Both these people are Irish, very white. To his credit, he looked at her, looked at the baby, dropped her hand, and silently and calmly go out of the delivery room, hospital, and her life. She goes on with the wedding, but this time it's to her best friend from high school, who is not a dude. So now she's a married Irish Catholic army lesbian with an illegitimate black baby. Seriously, I can't imagine the balls it takes to risk just having a kid of a different race while pretending for 9 months everything is fine and planning a wedding. Next story. My mom used to be an intensive care unit nurse and then became a lactations. She once told me about a mixed race couple, neither were white, that had an albino child. The mother was convinced that the father had an affair. This was not the stupidest thing she heard at work. Next story. After work, I would sometimes go to a bar for happy hour and came to know a few of the regulars. One day, one of them comes in just shaking his head with that 1,000-yard stare. He had twins with his wife. One of the girls got sick with a genetic illness and they tested her sister. Turns out that her sister doesn't have the genetic marker for this disease. His wife was, for lack of a more PG-13 way of saying it, faithful to him in the morning and unfaithful to him at night. Next story. I was in Texas at the time because I wanted to change the scenery. This was early 2000s, mind you, and I had this white trash woman come in with her deadbeat husband. I remember them from the ER guys. They said he had a kid that wasn't his already, but he knew that and married her while she was pregnant. So she's giving birth and it goes well, nothing really strange that I can note. But then we cleaned off the baby, and lo and behold, it was black. Both were white. Put 2 and 2 together. Anyways, after that, he got a list and started doing good for karma. Next story. I recently gushed at how much a cute little toddler looked like his dad. I made a big fuss. Someone pulled me aside, and I found out his wife cheated and the kid wasn't his. But they decided to stay together for their other kids. The rest of the evening was awkward. Next story. One of my buddies got a girl pregnant, blinded by the prospect of being a new father. The doctors and nurses had to convince him the baby was a little too dark to be his, and had to convince him he want to take a test. Yeah, wasn't his. Next story. I know some guy whose wife has given birth to 2 black babies. Both parents are white. The husband accepted it because the wife's cousin married a black guy. So there's that. Next story. My stepmother living in a hardcore Scottish Catholic family. During those times, out-of-wedlock pregnancies brought shame and embarrassment to the family, made even worse with no father around. But the real kicker was when the baby was born and it was black. My grandmother, who I no longer speak to because of this, I only found out a few years ago, gave the baby up for adoption and locked my stepmother away in Lennox Castle Mental Institute until she was 18. Yes, I understand that times have changed and all that crap, but let's face it, she was a fucking shitty human being for doing that to her own daughter. Next story. Lawyer here, I'll tell you a story about a client that he and I were sure that the child was not his in a paternity lawsuit. Have in mind that this guy was an old man and very uneducated but polite and just spoke in a rough way. So I asked him if the child was his and told him that if he refused to do a DNA test in court, the judge could interpret it as a confession. So, if we were to take a DNA test, we better make sure that he wasn't the father. He said no problem and said that he never had sex with this woman and she was crazy. I was surprised and asked again, until he said she just pleasure himself out for him. Realizing this, I said that we were fine in a paternity test, and we were going to win this. I just told him to use a better language in court, and he said okay. Come the day, this guy in front of a female judge used the same words, pleasure himself, and the judge laughed her ass off, and the plaintiff confessed that it was just that, but insisted in a DNA test, to which we agreed. The judge and I were finding this all very strange, but set the date to open the results. Again, we meet in court, and the results? He was the father. Everybody couldn't believe what was happening,
but he was the father and had to register the child and pay child support now. Some months later, he told me that she confessed to him that she got the sperm and put it in, and that she was after his retirement. He said that now he tries to stay away from young pussy. Next story. My son came out very dark-skinned. I'm olive-skinned. My husband is white as a ghost. His face was priceless. My mom was there and reminded him that my grandmother, her mother, is, well, black. It's hard for anyone to even recognize that my mom is mixed. She is quite possibly the whitest person you have ever seen. Years later, my son is identical to his dad. I swear he doubted me for 2 years. Next story. I used to have this old coworker who believed all babies were born white and turned their race later on. She used to tell the story of a friend of hers whose baby was born white when both parents were black, and she taught the black dad that the baby would turn black by his first birthday.
Next story. I'm not a doctor, but I have a friend that this happened to. He is Chinese, and the mother of his children is Caucasian. They had been dating for about a year when she got pregnant. As soon as she got pregnant, she told him that she was 100% sure it wasn't his, but wasn't sure who the real father was. He did the noble thing and stuck by her side, and 9 months later, out comes a half-Chinese baby who is shockingly his. So life goes on. Good for them. Then a year later, she gets pregnant again. This time she tells him that it is definitely his, and they start looking into buying a house for their little family. 9 months later, out comes a completely white baby. He told me as soon as she seen the baby's skin color, she looked at him and said, "Oh, I thought this one was going to be yours." Needless to say, he got out of that relationship and got full custody of his actual son. Now I see on FDB she is pregnant again, this time with a native fellow, so it will be interesting to see what comes of this. Next story. The chances are very slim, but a black baby to white parents with white grandparents, or the reverse, is not unprecedented. There is also the possibility that one of the grandparents cheated, and it took a generation to manifest, a little more likely than the first. So no, you don't know 100% that a child is not yours, even if it has a different skin color. If you want to be sure, make a test. Next story. Not a doctor, but this happened in my high school biology class. Worth the read, I promise. So for my AP Bio class in high school, after the AP exam, we had a lot of free time before school gets out to do cool experiments, because we finished the curriculum. One of the experiments we can do if we want is to figure out our blood type using the same machine in hospitals. Everyone, who wasn't afraid of needles, was super hyped about it. In preparation for the assignment, we had to ask our parents their blood types and see what our possibilities were. So the day comes, and the boy who sits next to me is running the test. While it is processing, he is telling me how he doesn't even have to do it. He knows he must be O positive because both of his parents are, etc. The results comes back, and he is a positive. I tell him the machine must be wrong. It's not. Apparently, he went home that night and asked his parents why they didn't tell him he was adopted. The father chimes in, "Son, you weren't adopted. I was there when you were born. Why would you say that?" He explains the blood test, and the mother just starts sobbing. Everyone at the dinner table did the math. My teacher had to get involved with all sorts of paternity lawsuits and drama that went down. Needless to say, that was the last year my school did that experiment. Next story. I have 2 friends where they don't look a thing like their parents, but according to DNA tests, that is their biological parents. They were both from white families, and one came out looking Mexican, and the other looks Native American. It's funny now, but it was hard wrapping our heads around that. As they grew up, you can see the family resemblance in their facial features. It was mostly the skin color that was off. It was not super off, but their skin was noticeably darker. I had to hear the story about how the dad thought it was not his and was wrong. Next story. Well, here is one for you. Married military couple, both white, living overseas. Pregnant with twins. Goes into labor. First child comes out white and a boy. Second child is delivered 4 minutes later and was Asian. White boy. Mass issues and questions are had. Turns out wife was having an affair with an Asian military person. Husband did not know. Kids were twins from different fathers, but twins. Conception happened this way. Wife was having time with lover. Husband comes home half hour early. Lover jumps out window and runs. Husband finds wife looking hot. Fun ensues quickly. Less than 2 minutes apart. DNA test now mandatory at all births on base due to this. Lover of wife is punished by military code of law. Kicked out of military. Next story. My wife's cousin and his now ex-wife are the whitest people you have ever seen. His son is Persian. We had to pretend for years that nothing seemed out of the ordinary until she up and left him one day for, you guessed it, a Persian. Next story. Not me, but a friend of a friend. His wife gave birth to a black baby, but the man she cheated with wasn't black. He was a white redneck. The baby is apparently part of a rare occurrence when both parents share a recessive black gene. Next story. No one thinks my kids look like me, and I agree, but the wife and I really don't know any black folk, except the pool boy. Oh, what a hard-working pool boy he is, though. Every day I come home from work and he is just finishing up, chest still heaving from the long hours of scrubbing those walls clean all day. I'm not sure why he needs black leather pants and that mask with a zipper for the mouth, but I guess it helps. Sometimes he'll bring in this giant roulette wheel looking thing that he tells me he's standing on and spins around in the water to hit them walls real good. That's how he refers to the pool. I didn't realize at the time that a $16 pool from Kmart would require so much maintenance. Of course, had I known, I think I would have abstained from that purchase. What were we talking about, by the way? Next story. Obligatory, not a doctor, but when I was a teenager, we had a white couple with two little blonde girls who lived across the street. The mom becomes pregnant, and my mom and I are invited to the baby shower and everything. The baby was born during the winter, and so we see very little of the family outside. And when we do, of course, all you see is a little bundled up snowsuit with a hat on in a pumpkin seat. No one really thought about it until we noticed that we don't see the dad around anymore. So spring comes along, and we see the mom emerge from the house for the first time, with the baby not being bundled up. He has a little curly black and dark skin. A few months later, they move out. Next story. Midwife here. I've seen a few, including a girl whose entire family and boyfriend had learning difficulties, and happily explained away the very brown baby by telling all and sundry that the mom had spent a lot of time sunbathing. Once I looked after a woman who begged us to hide her notes and ultrasound scan reports from her husband. He was being led to believe that the baby had arrived early, as the real due date would have shown that she conceived at a time when they were separated. I'll never forget her two young red-haired children, sat on the bed absolutely besotted with the new baby, while mom and dad sat at opposite ends, staring into space. Looked close to tears, and his jaw was clenched so hard it hurt to look at him. A multitude of emotions and desperate apologies hanging in the air. Not a pleasant sight. Next story. When I was little, I had blue eyes, blonde hair, and was pale, so people thought my white mom cheated on my dad, who is black. But my hair and skin darkened as I got older, and now I actually look mixed. Next story. My sister, who happens to be black, she was dating a guy named Leon, who was, for lack of better words, blacker than the ace of spades. Leon was there throughout the entire pregnancy, and was in the delivery, and my obviously mixed-race nephew comes out. My mother said that he knew there was a chance he was not the father, so he was more disappointed than angry. His mother was also there, and has been a surrogate grandmother to my nephew for 25 years now. My sister is also a lesbian. Next story. Another not a doctor. Good friends of the family include a lady who is bipolar and a bit schizoid, or something along those lines. Basically, she nutty, and does lots of unpredictable and nutty stuff. Only mentioned because it might be relevant? She is white, her boyfriend black. Like, very black. Kenyan black. She gets preggo, and everyone assumes black guy is the dad. Baby comes out, lily white. Like a red-haired snowball. Clearly not the black guy's kid. Everyone else is fully, what the heck? As they had been together a long while, and all along, everyone believed it was his. He looks at baby, takes into his arms like there isn't a problem in the world, with the biggest new daddy smile ever. I'm not sure what eventually came about, but apparently he just didn't care, and wanted to be with her, and wanted to be the dad at that time. Or maybe he was just the dumbest dude ever. Next story. My husband questioned me when our daughter was born. I have O-positive blood type. His parents told him he was a positive. Our daughter's blood type comes back as B-positive. I told him that his parents messed up, but he still questioned if the baby was his, or if the babies got mixed up. Yeah, definitely his kid. I thought it was kind of funny. Next story. White parents had black baby, and the father was furious. But after parental testing, and due to a genetic mutation, he is the father of the baby. Next story. My husband had a brief experience of, questioning this when our daughter was born. We are both white, but our daughter came out looking Inuit, or Mongolian perhaps. She had olive skin, black hair, and just generally the features you would expect of far northern native, Asian-related peoples. He said he felt really panicky when he saw her, but quickly put it out of his mind, figuring there was no way I cheated on him and that her appearance would surely change. It did change, rapidly and drastically, and she quickly began to look exactly like him. Next story. This happened to a friend of mine. White couple, and out comes a black baby. He came home from the hospital by himself and literally destroyed all the stuff they had for the baby. He broke up the bed, destroyed the mattress, the changing table, all the toys, everything. They didn't have a lot of money, so his family, parents and siblings, all raised the money for a divorce lawyer because his wife was trying to get money out of him. He was lucky that she didn't, but he became the biggest asshole in the world. I guess a betrayal of fidelity will do that to you. He'd even taunt his ex-wife sometimes by sending her messages asking how it was being a single mom. He even invested money in one of those companies that runs for-profit prisons, saying it was modern-day cotton picking and black people were making him money. Me and a bunch of friends got together and told him he needed to see a shrink to get his anger under control. After that, he sort of vanished on us. About 6 months later, he contacted me to see if we could get together for drinks. He'd seen a counselor and was no longer angry with the world. He wanted to get married and have his own kids one day and was ashamed of his conduct. He was trying to move on. Since then, he had gotten married and they've had 2 kids. No one doubts their paternity since they look just like him. He's better, and fatherhood has helped him get past his anger. As for his ex-wife, she'd become a cautionary tale for a lot of people. She'd had a fling with a man she met at a club when she and her friends had a girls' night out and thought the man had a condom on. She doesn't even know who the baby's father is. Most guys see her with that half-black child, give her a quick nope, and move on. She stayed with her parents for a while. They were outraged that she cheated on her husband. They didn't like her husband too much to begin with because he was very liberal, but they hated having to defend their former son-in-law for leaving their daughter. She's since gotten out on her own and lives with another woman who is also a single mom. They sort of manage the household in shifts while they work and go to school and watch each other's kids. Next story. When I was in junior high, we were in science class and learning about dominant and recessive genes. And when the teacher told us that because the gene for having blue eyes was recessive, 2 blue-eyed parents couldn't not have a brown-eyed child, one kid raised his hand and said, "Well, mine did," in a tone obviously believing that the teacher was wrong. The teacher and the whole class got silent, which was rare in a junior high class, and the kid just said, "Oh," and slumped down in his chair. Really, really sad. Next story. According to my in-laws, the doctors seemed to think this was the case a couple times when they had kids. To give you an idea, they both have light brown hair and blue eyes. One of their kids has that same coloring. My husband has black hair and brown eyes. One of his brothers has red hair and blue eyes, and another has blonde hair and brown eyes. All of those phenotypes are present amongst his grandparents and great-aunts, uncles. Next story. This is the story of my birth, so I experienced it but don't remember it. My mom has blonde hair, blue eyes, and is white as snow. My dad has brown hair, brown eyes, and not as white as my mom, but he isn't tan. My aunt told me she was waiting outside. I didn't want to come out because I've been in there 9 months, and I was comfortable as fuck. But no, I had to fucking come out then. So I'm cleaned up in crap and I'm handed to my dad. He takes me outside so everyone can see me. My aunt says once she saw me, she was like, "Oh my. Why does my sister's husband not freaking out right now? This baby is clearly black, because he is darker than the black babies in the nursery." She says she thought for sure I was black because I came out so dark, but it just so happens I'm naturally really tan. I guess I have a lot of Native American roots in me or something, but that's the story that gets told every time someone asks about my birth. I mean, I don't know 100% that I'm my father's son because we've never done the test. Oh well though, because I think a father is whoever raised you and treated you like a son. So even if he wasn't technically my dad, he'd still be dad to me. Next story. My cousin is clearly half black. Both his mother and the man who raised him are white. Everyone knows. Nobody has ever said a word about it. Not sure if it's his way of letting us know that he knows, but man, denial runs deep in this family.